Hi, I'm Heather, and this is my lesson. Just to give you a quick overview before I start, this unit is actually kind of based on a unit that I actually do teach to my fourth grade students. I kind of tweaked it to think about how it might look in a library or being co-taught with a librarian and a classroom teacher. The unit is about the American Revolution. The essential question for the unit is, how does a person's experiences influence his beliefs and actions? And what it kind of gets at is the different points of view of different people involved in the Revolutionary War. And you kind of break down and look at why some people choose to fight for independence, why some people choose to fight for England against independence. We also look at the point of view of slaves and how their different experiences, which are obviously completely different from the experiences of any colonist, how that affects their beliefs about the Independence War and how the choices they make during the Revolution. So that's kind of in the nutshell. The lesson that I'm going to show you today is the very first lesson in the unit. So it's really about the connect and wonder phase of the inquiry model, just to kind of get students excited about the content we're going to be talking about, thinking about the content, looking at some images and documents from that time period, and kind of getting their brain started. The skill that I'm working on, I'm kind of introducing very basic note taking. I've found that my kids are terrible at taking notes in any kind of organized way. At this point, I'm not really going to introduce the full final product that they're going to be working on. So it's just kind of a baby step, but I know as the teacher that taking notes, they're going to be looking at a lot of sources over the course of the unit, and that getting their thoughts down in organized ways that make sense when they look back at them later is going to be important. So we're going to be using introducing a basic graphic organizer and get starting just the process of putting thoughts down in paper in a way that makes sense later when they look at it, which is the biggest issue I have with my kids. They write stuff down and then later they can't read it, they don't understand it, they don't remember it. So that's kind of what this is tiptoeing into. Um, but I will say the main point of this particular lesson is just to kind of get them excited about what's coming. I know that Dr. Stripling really wanted us to kind of teach during the direct instruction phase, but the way that I have this lesson set up, the direct instruction is co-taught, and I couldn't really come up with a good way to demonstrate that without it looking like total Jekyll and Hyde-ish. So I'm gonna flip it around a little bit and kind of walk through the direct instruction and just kind of talk through it, and then do more of the teaching during the guided instruction. It just kind of makes more sense for the way I have things set up. So I hope that's okay. So when students come into the library, I will give them this graphic organizer, which I will attach to my lesson. But you can see it's just a very basic T-chart, two different categories. I notice, I wonder. I'll give that to them as they come in. And then I will have this image projected up on the smart board. Now, you probably noticed this doesn't have anything to do with the Revolutionary War. I base my lesson on my actual class, which includes, well, I'm a special ed teacher, so all of my kids have IEPs. But when they're pushed into their class, the five of them in particular really struggle if new content and a new skill is being introduced at the same time. So I always try to introduce a new thing with content that they're more familiar with before kind of taking that next step. So this is a picture that even if they're not necessarily baseball fans, they'll get it. It's modern day, it's sports, they'll understand that. So I'll give them the graphic organizer, and we'll just take a look at the different categories on the graphic organizer. So we have one column for I notice, and in parentheses under that, it just kind of explains that that's what did you see or hear that grabbed your attention? What do you know from looking at this image? And then the I wonder column, which is what are you confused about? What do you want to know more about when you look at this picture? What questions do you have? Creating questions is something that I'll get into more in the lesson, but it is going to be important for the final product that they can kind of think beyond just what they see and kind of create bigger questions, which is a whole nother thing later. But that's why I have the I wonder included in there. Okay. So I would model this the way I have it set up with me as the librarian and the classroom teacher with me as well. And what we would do is I, as the librarian, would kind of play the teacher role, and the classroom teacher would basically take on the role of a student. And we would walk through looking at the picture and filling this out. Um, I do this a lot with one of the teachers that I co-teach with, and for whatever reason, the kids get a really big kick out of us pretending to be students and modeling good things and not so good things. For some reason, they really enjoy that. Um, so I would present the image up on the board, and then I would have the classroom teacher kind of model. So I would ask them, okay, so let's look at this picture. When you look at this picture, what kind of things do you notice? What do you see? What do you know when you look at the picture? And the classroom teacher might say things like, I notice there are baseball players. The baseball players are happy. They're excited. There are a lot of people in the crowd. The crowd is excited. There's a one person running. Everyone else is standing in a circle. Just very basic, but just getting them to really kind of study the idea. And then when we go into I wonder, then again, that's more creating questions. So it might be things like, I wonder if this is an important game. Is it a championship game? I wonder if this team just won. I wonder if the game is tied. I wonder what this team is. I would also make sure that the classroom teacher includes one statement that reflects some background knowledge. So the teacher might say, well, I'm a baseball fan, so I know looking at this picture that this team is the Cubs. And because they're wearing their pinstripe uniform, they must be playing in Chicago. And that gives us an opportunity to kind of talk about background knowledge and how sometimes you'll look at an image or a text that you already know a lot about. And that kind of, so you might be able to make different observations or ask different questions depending on what kind of knowledge that you already have. So that would be the direct instruction. So we would kind of do that together. And then during the guided practice, we would move into more of a content example. So I would put this image, which I know you can't see super well, but it's the Boston Tea Party, up on the board, and we would kind of do the same thing. So this is what it would look like. Okay, so we have this picture up on the board. I'm going to give you 1 minute to look at the picture and really observe it. And I want you to really look at it. Don't get stuck on the first thing that jumps out at you. Look at some of the details, really study it. All right, go ahead and go. So I give them a minute. And then I said, okay, I'm going to give you a minute to write one I notice statement. So something that you noticed when you looked at this picture, and one I wonder statement, a question that you have about it. Maybe something you don't understand about the picture or a question that the picture leads you to ask. I'm going to give you 1 minute to do that. Okay, go ahead and go. And I would give them a little time to do that. And then I would ask students to share. All right, would anybody like to share one of their I noticed statements? Jonathan, what did you notice about this picture? Well, I noticed that the people are very excited. Okay, that's true. If we look at our picture, we've got people waving hats around. Some people have they're waving their arms around. So maybe they're excited. That's a good observation. Does anybody else have anything? Haley, what did you think? Well, I think that this is the Boston Tea Party. So I know that these people are not excited. They're actually angry. All right, so Haley already knows a little bit about this picture, so her observations might be a little bit different because she already has some background knowledge, which is great. That doesn't mean that Jonathan's wrong. It just means that Haley knew a little bit more already, which is okay. Does anybody else have any I noticed statements about this picture? Well, I noticed, Hunter, what do you have? Well, I noticed boxes, and I wrote down boxes. Okay, so there are boxes in this picture, but so remember when we were modeling it, we said we don't have to write in complete sentences when we're taking notes. We can just write phrases, but that it's important that the phrases that we write make sense later when we look at them. So you're right, there are boxes in this photo, but if I just write the word boxes and I come back to this in 5 or 6 days, do you think that's enough for me to remember what's going on in this picture? And then hopefully Hunter would say, "Oh no, so maybe we," so that I would might ask him, can you give me a little more detail in that statement? And he said, "Well, the boxes are being thrown in the water," and kind of just walking through that. Okay, so boxes thrown in water. It's still short. It's still not a full sentence, but it gives us a little bit more detail so that when we look at this in a few days, we might remember it. Um, Good. And then I would do the same thing with I notice. I'm a little pressed for time, so I don't want to get into that too much. But same thing, or I'm sorry, I wonder. So who has questions about this picture? And some of the questions they might come up with are things like, I wonder why they're angry. I wonder what the Indians on the boat are doing. I wonder different things like that. So, and again, just kind of modeling what that looks like and how it looks like recorded on the paper. Oh, I forgot to mention that. So basically, as we were doing this, I would also have a copy of the graphic organizer up on the smartboard, and I would be showing them exactly where I'm writing things, how I'm phrasing it, and they would be writing the questions and statements for this picture, just to kind of practice that together. Okay. So that's the gist. For the independent practice, what would happen basically is what I have always called a gallery walk. So there would be other documents and images related to the American Revolution up around the library, kind of blown up in size so they're obvious to see. That would include, excuse me, a copy of the Declaration of Independence, a picture of the Founding Fathers signing the Declaration of Independence, an image of the Boston Massacre, a runaway slave wanted poster, an image of a slave market, just to kind of get them looking at and thinking about different things that happened in this period. And again, at this point, the emphasis is not so much on them knowing the content or correcting their perceptions about what they're looking at. It's more about them getting their brains thinking and getting those thoughts down on paper in a way that makes sense. Um, so they would walk around the room. I would give them 15 minutes. If they don't get through all of them, that's fine. I think it's actually always a little bit better to have a little too much than not enough, and then they get restless and bored. So I would set a timer. I would tell them you're going to go around the room. You can go to whichever documents or images you want in whatever order, and you're going to write at least one I notice statement and I wonder statement about each document, and make sure it's recorded in the correct column, that you have each image has a number on it, so they need to record if they're looking at document number 6, writing document number 6 on their paper, and then the observations about that image. And they would do that independently. While they're doing that, me and the classroom teacher would both be circulating around the room, just kind of providing whatever scaffolding is needed. Would kind of focus on the 5 kids with IEPs because they really struggle to kind of get their ideas into words and then words onto the paper, but really checking in with everybody, having them read some of the statements to me, looking at how they're recording it, providing any help that they need or any encouragement. And then after 15 minutes, we would all come back to the carpet, kind of regroup, and they would share out. We would go through 2 or 3 of the different images. Again, at this point, the emphasis is not on getting through all the content. It's just hearing the questions and the statements and seeing how they recorded it. So 2 or 3 people for each document would share. We would kind of talk about it. And then for reflection, I would just do a simple thumbs up, thumbs down. Did you, well, let me see exactly what I wrote. So just something about, do you think that you understand how to make observations? Thumbs up or thumbs down. Do you understand how to ask questions based on a picture or document? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Just very quick and easy. And then the final question I would ask them is, do you think you could complete an activity like this independently? And I would just have them on their paper at the top by their name, just write a simple yes, no, with a little help. Again, at this point, just a very quick check-in, nothing like super heavy duty. For assessment, again, this is a pretty straightforward lesson. There's not a lot of content involved, but I would collect their graphic organizers and kind of look over them and check to see if their observations and I wonders make sense, if they're recorded in the right place, if they're clearly labeled with what document, that kind of thing. If I understand what they're referring to and how they worded it, and I would pull kids as necessary. If it was obvious there was a little group of kids who maybe didn't understand that, pull them for a few minutes at some point and maybe practice again, or at least kind of go over it. Um, Not for a grade, but just to kind of check where they are. Because again, as we get deeper into the unit and we're doing heavier note taking, that it's going to be a really important skill. Um, I think that's it. Thanks a lot.